Welcome back to our third episode of our Come Reflect Act series, where we dive deeper with you together onto the CRA, its requirements and its effects on specifically manufacturers of IoT products. And today we would like to get very practical with you together. We want to go through a hands-on checklist that we have developed that you can use to accompany your journey to Cyber Resilience Act compliance until December 2027. So therefore, let's not waste any more time. Just quickly recap together the timeline of the Cyber Resilience Act so that we are all on the same page for that. Until 11th of September 2026, the vulnerability reporting obligations get into force of the CRA, and on 11th of December 2027, the full Cyber Resilience Act will be in force in the whole European Union. So please, for the remaining video, keep those two important dates in your mind. In total, the CRA checklist that we'll be about to present you consists of 7 points. And the first point, very important, is product classification. The Cyber Resilience Act has 4 different categories of products, and depending into which category your product falls under, you have different ways and possibilities how to achieve compliance. So in total, the first category is default category, which basically 90% of the IoT products will fall under this category, such as smart wearables, smartwatches or other non-critical devices. The second category is important products, where we have important products class 1, class 2, and then we have the highest criticality, which is called critical products. Here, smart meters, for example, are considered as critical products within the Cyber Resilience Act. And what's important to note there, it doesn't matter if your product is a default product or a critical product, the obligations of the Cyber Resilience Act still apply in the same way. The only difference that you have as a manufacturer is how you can do conformity assessments with the CRA. For default products, you basically don't need a third party to verify conformity. For important and critical products, there will be third parties and auditors involved in your conformity assessment. The second point on our CRA checklist is the cybersecurity risk assessment. The cybersecurity risk assessment presents the foundation for all your future compliance efforts. It basically assesses the foreseeable use of your product. It takes into consideration potential threats that your product is exposed to, the foreseeable misuse, and based on that, you will have to meet the essential cybersecurity requirements and the vulnerability handling requirements outlined in the annex of the Cyber Resilience Act. So this really presents your foundation that you need to do first before looking into the essential cybersecurity requirements and the vulnerability handling requirements. What's also important to note about the cybersecurity risk assessment is that it's not a one-time effort that you do before launching a product. The CRA obliges manufacturers to continuously update the risk assessment with evolving threats, evolving new risks, or attacks that happen to similar products that will also affect your IoT products. So therefore, the cybersecurity risk assessment needs to be at least updated throughout the support period of your product. Third point on our CRA compliance checklist are the CRA vulnerability reporting obligations, which, as we said in the beginning, already apply from September 2026 onwards. And basically, they force manufacturers of products with digital elements to report either actively exploited vulnerabilities or severe incidents to official authorities of the European Union. In short, those are called CSIRT. And there are certain deadlines that organizations have to meet when reporting those incidents. So for example, a first warning needs to be submitted 24 hours after the actively exploited vulnerability is discovered, and this goes on from a first warning until a detailed report on what the vulnerability is, how it has been mitigated, and a concluding report that you need to submit to the official authorities. Fourth point on our CRA checklist are the essential cybersecurity requirements. And these requirements are the ones that will affect your products the most. They basically specify how you need to build up secure by design IoT products in the future. And it will break the scope of this video to talk about each individual of those requirements individually. In total, there are 13. We will do that in a dedicated other episode, so stay curious and stay with us on this one. Then we can provide you with more practical insights on what they ask from your IoT products. Fifth point on our CRA compliance checklist are the vulnerability handling obligations. Before, we talked about the essential cybersecurity requirements, which are functional obligations that your product has to fulfill. And after this, in the Annex 1 of the CRA are the vulnerability handling obligations, which basically specify how you need to deal with vulnerabilities, what mechanisms you need to implement on the product level in order to address vulnerabilities efficiently. Again, there are 8 individual requirements for vulnerability handling, which would just be too much to cover in this video, and therefore we will also have a dedicated one for these requirements that will be there in the future. The 6th point on our CRA compliance checklist are documentation obligations. The CRA imposes new documentation requirements that manufacturers need to fulfill in order to comply with the regulations. In total, there are 3 different documentations or documents that you need to draw up for your products. The first one is the technical documentation. The technical documentation will include the cybersecurity risk assessment, as stated before, and it will describe how your product meets each individual requirement of the essential cybersecurity and vulnerability handling requirements on a technical level based on your risk assessment. And most of the times, or very certainly, this technical documentation will not be disclosed to the public. This will be a document that will be drawn up by the manufacturer for the official bodies of the EU. The second document that you need to draw up for your CRA compliance is a declaration of conformity. And depending on your size and the product classification that you have, you can either do a simplified declaration of conformity. This will be determined by your company size. And there's also the possibility that the declaration of conformity can be signed by yourself and not by a third party, but we'll dive deeper into this afterwards. And last but not least, we have the informations and instructions to the user, which basically you might have them already today. They need to describe a safe setup of the product, how updates work, etc. So all of those typical information and instructions to the user need to also be included in this document. Last but not least on our compliance checklist, let's talk about conformity assessments. So now you have done all the documentation obligations, you fulfill all the requirements imposed by the CRA, and now you need to prove that you have done that. And there are, depending on your product classifications, different ways how manufacturers can do that. First of all, if your product is categorized as a default product, you can do a self-assessment, which basically means that you document how you achieved compliance on your own, and you then also declare compliance on your own. This is only possible for default products, meaning products that are not that critical. For important products class 1, important products class 2, and also for critical products, there are different ways to do the conformity assessment. all of them involve a third party or an auditor that needs to check, once you have documented how you achieve compliance, that needs to check and validate if you have done it in the right way. So there you need to include a third party or an auditor for your conformity assessment. Traditionally, IoT was all about improving productivity, reducing certain costs or efforts for industrial processes, or improving the efficiency within certain industrial environments. And now the Cyber Resilience Act also enforces cybersecurity. It adds cybersecurity to a picture and implements a baseline of functional cybersecurity requirements that each IoT product needs to fulfill. However, this isn't only an obligation, it can also be an opportunity for you as a manufacturer of those products. There's been a very interesting study done by McKinsey that basically says that IoT buyers focus way more on security than IoT sellers think. Hence, there is an opportunity for increased revenue when your IoT products have better cybersecurity functionalities and a better level of security in general. And therefore, if you're a manufacturer of IoT products or managing IoT products, please feel free to use this checklist that we have just shown you as a guideline to your compliance roadmap, to CRA compliance. And if you want to look at it in a written way, you can find it in our blog section as well.